It's appropriate we're here at Addington Raceway alongside the Hall of Fame. When we talk about Tim Butt, ultimately I'm thinking his name will eventually appear here. After all, he cut his teeth here in Canterbury at Addington Raceway, where so many of his biggest wins eventuated. 2 New Zealand Cups with Flashing Red, a large number of Dominion handicaps with the likes of Lyle Creek and Take a Moment, amongst others. Today we sit down with Tim Butt, talk about his journey through harness racing, where he finds himself now in the Sunshine State of Queensland, and what the future holds for him and his family. Tim, Torval, Queensland. How do we end up here?
Well, Greg, I just probably lucky, I suppose, with the climate and, moving to Aussie for sort of 5 years ago. We sort of always wanted to end up here in Queensland just because of the lifestyle and the racing's got a lot to offer as well. So we're actually, rapt to be here.
Pretty much the move to Australia came around the time My Field Marshal was going 146.9. When you hear those figures, is it still quite unbelievable that A, you won your Miracle Mile, but B, he did it in that time?
Yeah, without doubt. Like it was quite interesting when we moved to Sydney. You know, I took a trotter called Daryl Boker. I think he went 151, and we had a 4-year-old called Let It Ride who went 148 in the chariots, and then we had Field Marshal, of course. So, it showed how far we'd come as far as the speed going. And when horses are used to racing miles all the time, they get quicker and quicker. And when you train them for that, they do come to it.
My Field Marshal, Lazarus still 3 deep and not improving, and Lenny the Shark is trying to get into the fight as they straighten up. 26-2 for the third split. Soho Tribeca gives anything for love to go by. Jillaby Kung Fu Tiger Tara, and here's My Field Marshal winding up from the back of the field. It's Soho Tribeca, Jillaby Kung Fu, over the top is My Field Marshal. Soho Tribeca, My Field Marshal, and it's going to be My Field Marshal on the line, grand victory. My Field Marshal wins the Miracle Mile.
So we'll get a chance to talk about some of the great horses and the run that you had from the turn of the century to, well, basically the next decade. But the success you had in Australia, was it always something that you aspired to sit down with Andrea when the kids got older and thought, you know what, we could move over there?
Yeah, I think so. I think, when you're been in harness racing as long as I have in New Zealand, we're just ready for a change. As I said, I was there when Lord Module won the Alan Matson Free for All. I was there when Handsdown won the New Zealand Cup, and they're terrific memories and great. Harness racing was a great part of my life then, and we lived for it. But as I say, being around 35 years, training for 30 or so, and the repetition, we're ready for a change really.
You were always going to be in harness racing. When we think about great names in the sport, your grandfathers, Wes Butt and Derek Jones, they paved the way for you, didn't they?
Oh, for sure. Derek was a great socialiser and a terrific horseman in his own right, and a real mentor to people. Like he's such a compassionate person and loved getting around. And Wes was more the worker and the, But I had a great relationship with Wes. We did a lot of work together. He taught me a lot of things about farming and horse adjustment and fixing fences and the practical things in life. And I think having a little bit from both, you got the work ethic and the natural horseman from Wes, but also a bit of socialising and having the fun from Derek.
You were a handy junior driver, so tell me about, school was great, you loved your rugby and obviously played to a reasonable level as well, but when you left school, where did you go? Where was the first place of work?
Yeah, well, pretty much the last year of my high school year, I was working for Dad.
Yep.
Robert Anderson was Dad's main man. He's a terrific breaker in horses and been in the game for long. So he left about a year before I was still at school. So I think I had something like 61 half days off that year in my school report. So, but I really went to school. I love my rugby. I played in the first 15, the fourth form, and really enjoyed that side of it. Then I had a serious knee injury that needed operating on. I spent a week in hospital, and that curtailed my rugby career for that part of my life. And then I went and worked for Dad full time. So we built up a pretty handy stable, and I was pretty keen to get stuck into things. And Dad had a bit of a stud at the time. We had a stallion called Valerian, and so I did the stud work as well. And I always say to my boys now, like, we used to breed the horses,
Yep.
then we'd wean them, then we'd break them in, and then we'd go from there. So we learned from the ground up.
Junior driver, when I look back through your time, you actually weren't the worst. I think you drove about 30 winners in that period, but it's never been part of your professional training sort of lifestyle. Were you always going to give it away?
It's hard to say. Like I was probably pretty shy and pretty naive when I was young. I was, you know, I had a good temperament when I played rugby. I wasn't scared of anything, but on the racetrack, I was probably quite a shy boy, you know. And but I finished second dance on the South Island Junior Drivers with number of wins, won my second season, and you know, I was probably getting better and better at those times. You didn't get the opportunities like the kids get nowadays, and you know, when we brought the property, me and Anthony together, and it just was a natural thing. He was such a talented driver. I never had ability, but you know, I was a handy driver at the same time.
All right, so that's the property on the corner of Curras and Newtons, and Andrea and you, your wife Andrea, who I think is coming up nearly 3 decades you've been married.
Oh, jeez, I've done pretty well, haven't I?
Well, yes, I think you have.
Yeah, no,
yeah, about 93, was it? Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, Greg being part of the family, Andrea's been a great support right through, you know, and we've had some great times together and got the kids, and yeah, it's a big part of my life, really. I'm proud of the way they've grown up and that sort of thing, so yeah, it's been good.
Dubois Moss was your first training win, and it was at a place that you used to love going.
Yeah, Nelson, yeah, he was my first winner.
I think he was your first 2 winners.
Yeah, he won at Blenheim the second day as well, and yeah, he was a French-bred trotter, and it was interesting. He was owned by a Consulate General of Norway, Oddvar Anderson, who was imported those early French trotters. So it probably, you know, got me interested for things later on with the European scene, etc.
First good horse you had, Happy Asset. He really put the premier stables, as they became, in the limelight, and allowed you to travel with a pretty good horse too.
Oh yeah, he was a great introduction, really, because he wasn't a limelight horse. He was always up against better horses, but he always had a chance. You know, won Auckland Cup and run third in the Inter-Dominion final, and you know, I remember getting on the plane to come over to Melbourne for the Inter-Dominions. I think it was the 2000 or maybe 1999 Inter-Dominions, and Harness Racing New Zealand presented every runner a rug before we got on the plane, and the first horse came out, it was Home Stigi, and then the second horse came out, it was Yule Star, then Christian Cullen, and then Courage Under Fire, and Happy Asset was the next one. I thought, well, what the hell am I doing here, you know? Yeah. But he ended up being the most successful horse out of that contingent and that Inter-Dominion, so just shows you if you just, you know, put your head down and hope for a bit of luck in the running, you have a chance.
He beat Yule Star when he won that Auckland Cup, and that Inter-Dominion that you're talking about was the 2000 Inter-Dominion. It'd be hard to argue that that wasn't one of the great series that we've ever seen, if not the greatest in the modern era.
Yeah, well, it was when they changed the heats to, like, you know, finals, four sort of rounds, you know, and it was designed, Victoria designed it to probably suit Jacob Maker.
Yep.
And but Happy Asset performed well. He ran second in the Hunter Cup to Yule Star, which was one of the heats, and he was a little tad unlucky in the final. He drew the outside of the front and worked forward, did a lot of work, and still come home for third. So yeah, it was a great introduction because it was high profile, and I had Lyle Creek there at the same time, and you know, geez, we enjoyed it. You know, the fun we had, and I didn't feel the pressure. Like I just lived in the moment, and you know, we probably worked hard, but we sort of drank pretty hard too.
Yeah, partied pretty hard, and you just mentioned Lyle Creek, probably the horse that your career will be defined on when you do finally hand up the reins and maybe hand it over to young Riley, because he was not only a horse that put your name in lights, but he took you around the world.
Oh, for sure, you know, well, just a horse that made you look good. You know, you could have him 80% right, and he'd still win. He was just an out-and-out champion. I even remember when we moved here, I've got a sign that there's a Lyle Creek sign of the creek that goes across Kaikoura, and I've actually brought it with me, and I put it up there, and a feed guy from down the road called in. He said, "You didn't train that horse, did you?" And you know what I mean. So, you know, people from all over Australasia that have anything to do with harness racing or racing identify with him. So when you're lucky enough to train a horse like that, you know, it's pretty special. And the trips we went on to Europe and, you know, even the trips to Australia were fantastic.
By Royden Glen out of Carlem, it just shows you sometimes they don't need to be bred in the pink. Mind you, when you think about the Dam side and the Smiths from Kaikoura, it's been a great breed.
Yeah, when you think about it, he's by Royden Glen, who was probably one of our like champion horses on ability, and then his mother Callum's by Noodlem, who's another champion horse, you know, on ability, one of our greatest ever 2-year-olds. And I guess he just got the genes from both, you know. And then the trotting side of it, there's an old adage that the pacing bred trotters always have a bit more speed than the trotting bred trotters, and I've always sort of looked at that. And but he was just a freak, wasn't he? You know, like you know, I remember Barry Purdon saying to me one day, he said, we always stayed at Barry with the horses, he's a great host, and he said to me, you don't realise how good he is till you have to drive against him, you know, and then you analyse it, you know, he just outstay them. He sat back and they went hard, he just outfinished them, and, you know, just a terrific horse.
Of course, one of the great elements of Lyell Creek's career was the fact that he was owned by a man affectionately known as Steel Balls, Graham Bruton. He just added to the story. Can you remember he'd had a couple of starts for the Smiths when you guys bought him, and from memory it was 20 grand, I think, or something like that?
I think it was actually, they wanted 25 and Brody offered 20, I think it was 22 and a half.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. And I remember him coming in the gate, and we had no expectations for him at all. But the Smiths give them a great grounding, and you know, he'd shown sort of raw talent, but he'd struggled with scours all his early life, and Smiths had trouble with him, but he just seemed to get over that. And you know, I remember Anthony was actually away with Undercover Lover in America, and I worked him down all winter, and I actually drove myself at the trials, and I was in the open class trot, and I thought, and I could have beaten them, you know what I mean? I just gave him a little bit of a quiet one, and his first start onto his sequence was a 2-mile junior drivers race with Andrew McPherson driving him, and I showed him where the winning post was, and I said, just point him towards that, and I had a little sly bet on him, so I think he paid $5, and I think he won his next 22 in a row, or 23 in a row.
Yeah, he should have actually won 35 races in a row, and so many of them at Group 1 level, but he got beaten in a New Zealand trotting free-for-all. Do you have a favourite race? And I have one, which the knockers suggested when he came back from all of those races overseas, and he got to a Rowe Cup Carnival, a race he had great success in, of course, and he won, and it was awe-inspiring watching him run away with that Rowe Cup.
Oh, for sure. That was special, because you know, there was a lot of critics around. There was the Blue Magic saga at the time, and there was a lot of people saying he was on this and on that sort of thing because he'd bled in America. But you know, as history will say, that you know he wasn't, because he got tested for it so many times. But actually, one of my favourite races is the Australasian Trotters Champs. It was at Moonee Valley, and he was just in the prime of his career. It was just before he left for Europe, and he was 50 metres behind, and he had to give last sunset, trotted away and led. And poor old Lyle, and they ran hard, and he only caught them up the winning post. And I thought, oh well, he's got to get round him sometime. Ants went straight round him. I thought, we'll give him a breather down the back straight. Well, they cleared out by about 5 lengths, you know, and because he had to take the speed out of last sunset, and turned for home, and he went on and won by. And Dan Malecki said he's won by 80 metres because he went on and won by 30 metres.
Yeah.
Like, it was a Herculean performance, you know. I know it's emotional when it's your own horse, but you know, no horse could do that.
He won over 50 races and $3 million, and like I said before, he probably defines your career in so many ways, but almost as an act of a racing god, along came Take a Moment. The heir apparent, when he left to go overseas, Take a Moment was in the barn.
Yeah, we were pretty motivated to like keep looking for those horses and keep getting on the grand circuit, because we had to do it to survive for a start, but to keep your profile up there. And I had a really affection for Take a Moment's breeding. He was out of a French bred mare, and he was also, his granddad was by a stallion called Crockett, who my father stood. And Crockett was a pretty good sire of both pacers and trotters, and he left some bronze trail and some real top pacers, but he also left trotters. So that sort of swayed me to like him. But then on raw talent, he he had it all there, and we just put a syndicate together, and it was big money at the time. I think Mark Purdon trialled him and turned him down, and we paid another 30% more, I think. But
so Paul Corcoran, he developed him, and I think he won about 4 races for him before you got him, but you didn't get him for $22,500. But you had some owners involved in him that had been a big part of the stable.
Oh, big, the guys like Jack O'Donnell, and I think Trevor Woolley was in him, and Jack was a great racing man. More galloping until he got involved with me. He was, I think he won the award for the #1 galloping guy. Got the Mercedes, etc., etc. But they were great supporters of the stable. Great guy, and good for me because he kept my feet on the ground a lot and pulled me down to earth if I needed a bit of a shake up here and there. So, but Take Him Home was just another one of those things that just fell into place. We provided the platform for it all by having the ability or the balls to buy him. But at the end of the day, he's just another terrific horse, and yeah.
Yeah, he came to the Inter-Dominion here in Queensland of 2001. He didn't win on his first night. I think he ran 5th or 6th, so he had to win the second night to get into the final. But he beat Mountain Gold, and he signalled right there and then that he was going to be the horse to follow over the Grand Circuit.
Yeah, he's very mature when we brought him over. We'd planned to set him for I took him to Auckland at Christmas time just for a trip away, and while he didn't perform that well up there, it made him. And then when we come back here, I think it was about May for the Inter-Dominions, he was a bit more seasoned, and he broke the first night. He was too fresh, and the second night he won nicely, and then the Inter-Dominion final just fell into place. Last Sunset was favourite, and he missed away slightly, and he was a great stayer, Take Him Home. And if you kept him for one run and they went hard, he was pretty hard to beat.
Do you reckon he got the credit that he probably deserved? I mean, he won, I think it was like 17 or 18 in a row at one stage, but because of what Lyle had done, people probably thought, oh yeah, he's not as good as him, and he probably wasn't, but in his own era, he was.
He won 18 in a row, all in open class, so that's pretty hard to do. And he won those Dominions off handicaps. Every Dominion he won was off a handicap because he won a Group 1 the previous year. So I think he lived in Lyle's shadow, and as I said, he was beatable, but on his day he was pretty hard to beat, and he wasn't an easy horse to train. He always had feet problems, and so it was hard to get him dead. But when he was dead right, he won the New Zealand Free for one day. He was last at the 600. He was in front turn of a home. You know what I mean? He just had that explosive speed, especially on the corners.
Tim, tell me about the relationship with your brother Anthony, the champion driver that he has been for so many decades now. What was that like, being brothers and the trainer-driver race day relationship, and how you worked in together? Because from the outside, it's a remarkable relationship.
Yeah, well, I think earlier on we played rugby together. Every second year I'd have to go up and play an Ant's age group. So he'd be first 5, I'd be second 5. So we always had a healthy respect for each other. We're both very competitive, but drivers are drivers that they get nervous on race day, and whereas I'm a bit more laid back and a bit more deep thinking about things. But when you look back, we probably motivated each other. Ant's I give him a lot of confidence sometimes and be a bit more blasé about it and get him more relaxed rather than, because drivers get so tense and they make a split-second decision, and whereas we can make mistakes all during the week and no one sees them. So, when you look back, we probably had we're different as people,
yep.
But we had a great working relationship, and when you go to war together, like we'd walk into Moonee Valley with our horses, or we'd walk into Melton, or the new horse, our horses were ready to go, and they'd be driven right, and and Ant said that aggression, the respect, and also the judgment, and he's become one of the greatest big race drivers that we've ever seen.
Tough time in your life. 2005, 6, you lose 2 of the greatest influences in your life. Your dad, Murray, had a marked effect on harness racing in the Canterbury area through the feats of you guys, but he was also a very handy horseman himself. You weren't in the country at the time, and that was well, it's hard to take losing a parent anyway, Tim, but it was extremely tough.
It was, Greg, especially the circumstances. Dad was a sort of a great man, like and you wouldn't think it would happen to a person like him. He was so easygoing, and but he was great for us. He was a great father. He was well respected in the industry. And he was actually a better driver than people realise. He loved driving. We'd give him a drive every year, and for quite a few seasons here, he'd just pick up the last winner. He hadn't driven a winner one year, and the last meeting of the year I put him on a horse and he'd led all the way. And so he was a very underrated driver. Yeah, and he was naturally president of the Horsemen's Association and did a lot of things outside of actually being a successful trainer driver, you know. But it was a tough time. You know, but I remember Paul Davies saying to me one time, one of my best owners had left me at the time as well, and he said, you've lost your best owner, your two mentors in your life, and you've come out and won the next two New Zealand Cups, so you just throw yourself into your work, and it's what we're bred to do and what we were taught by those people. So, you know, I'm pretty good on death and that. I think it's part of our journey in life, and but it still makes me emotional. But you know, those things are just they got to be character building. They've got to make you stronger, and you want to succeed for them. So I think we've done them pretty proud.
Yep. And Pop Derek, I mean, yes, I remember talking to Anthony straight after Flashing Reds Cup, and he got very emotional as well. But between him and your father Murray, those times with Lyle and take him home, it just makes them all more special, because your dad and your mum Jenny loved nothing more than going on tour with you guys, coming to Australia and watching those horses go around.
Well, they were part of it. They enjoyed so much of it. You know, I remember after Derek passed away, everyone I would go to the Dominions, I'd say, I knew Derek. There was so many people that knew Derek, and I was at the awards in Sydney not long after I'd been there, and Kevin Newman's wife was there, and she'd sponsored it. And I thought, you know, they probably know Derek. Should I get the courage up to go and say good day? And so I got the courage to go and sit down beside her at the table and say, look, I'm, you know, Derek Jones's grandson. Next month the story started coming out. You know what I mean? So his respect that he had around Australasia and
around the world, Tim.
Around the world, yeah, for sure. And because he was such a great socialiser, and you know, I always had a bottle of Glenfiddich whiskey for him at my place when he'd come around. He'd always have one, never have three. You know, and he'd bring a bag of oranges or a bag of bananas or something for the kids, and he loved his Chinese. He loved his Chinese restaurants, the Jumbos and the Chung Wah, and that era was, you know, a man of his social skills, which, you know, I like to feel that I've got a fair bit of that from him.
Yeah, the Chung Wah, it was an institution, wasn't it, at the time, and
well, not many people.
Toy Chan, he was a great mate of his.
Married at a Chinese restaurant.
No, well, we need to talk about that, because how did you court Andrea? What sort of romantic were you at the time? And yeah, like you said before, she has been an incredible pillar in your life.
Well, it's just a case of having a lot in common, I think. I played a lot of rugby, and Andrea actually, we went to school together naturally, but we were in different years, and I was actually in the same class as her sister Lisa, and so we'd had a bit, you know, we probably moved apart during those early teen years, and you know, my life evolved around West Melton rugby and the West Melton pub and racing, and you know, there was all the Eddie Cowies and the Robert Dunns and all those guys there. It was a prolific racing area, and then Andrew actually moved out with a couple of friends, and they flattered not far from the West Melton pub, and they started coming down, and so one thing led to another, and you know, they used to come on the bus trips to the rugby, so the girls would come and they'd go to the pub, and us guys would go to the changing rooms, and then, you know, they were great days, great Jeff Dunn and Jim O'Reilly and Neil Munro and those harness boys, you know, so.
Friends for life, you know, they're a great bunch of guys when you get together.
Well, even our rugby careers, you know, like I think West Melton's the only time we won 3 premierships in a row, you know, because we had that work ethic, Ed and Shin and those guys, you know. Rugby was our out. We work like hell to get to lunchtime. We clean our boots, jump in the car and go to rugby. It was like a release, you know. So, but they were tough boys, and you know, they played well.
Yep. 4 kids. Pretty proud of all 4, I know. Leah being the oldest, and she's got to a really high level hockey-wise. Kate, who's now based here in Queensland and working out of the Creek. Reese, who's, well, I'm not really sure what Reese is up to. He's an aloof character. He enjoys life, doesn't he? That'd be fair to say, but a smart kid.
Yeah, they've all done pretty well. Like as I said, Andrew had put a lot of work into them when I was travelling, and she put so much time into the kids when, you know, when we were busy and so forth, and well, I was concentrating on being the breadwinner. So, No, they're all different in their own right. You know, Leah's done well in the hockey arena, and you know still lives in Christchurch. Reece is actually in Queenstown. You know, he's got his architecture degree, and he's just doing a builder's apprenticeship now. So, but I think the best thing I can remember of those kids is at my 50th. We walked out of McDonald's at 5 o'clock in the morning. All had a fair bit to drink. So I think when you can do that with all your kids, they knew how to drink, they behaved right, but they had a good time as well.
Yeah. And of course Riley, the youngest, he's in the business now. Was that always going to be the case? Was he always as interested as you were as a young guy? What I remember the most about him is he damn near knew more about the form and the horses that were going around than me.
Yeah, he liked to bet. He's pretty switched on as far as that side of it goes, but probably not. He's probably just come along in his teenage years, and he got interested in the breeding side of it, and it's really just gone. You know, as soon as he come to Aussie, you know, he basically left school and worked for us, and it's gone from there. But you know, we didn't encourage them to get into the industry, but we didn't deny them the chance if they wanted to. You know, it's a tough game, and it's bloody hard for young kids, especially nowadays. Like it's hard to make a lot of long hours, and you know, a lot more social media and a lot more stresses outside of racing than normal.
Don't really want to brush over a couple of horses that were blooming good to you. Tribute was a winner of the Sire Stakes final, and For Real, she was flying and ultimately became the mother of, she won the Oaks of course, and she became the mother of My Field Marshal, but you needed those types of horses to keep the name to the fore. Yeah,
Tribute was he was owned by some great owners, you know, Pete and Joan Cox, where Peter was, you know, on the Canterbury Park Trotting Club board, and you know, a terrific sponsor and supporter of harness racing, and they were great owners. We had so much fun with them, you know. I remember actually Joan brought up the other day. It was only 4 or 5 years ago. She went to a pub in Lincoln, and it's called the Lab, I think, or something like that. And the barman said to her, "G'day, Joan," and she said, she thought, how does he know me, you know? So she went back later and said, so do I know you? And the barman said, "I'll never forget you and your trainer dancing on the tables at the Whiteborough Hotel after the Kaikoura Cup, you know, and on a Monday night, you know." So they were great fun, and Joan was a great supporter of us, and you know, and For Real was the same. She was so underrated. She always had a suspensory ligament problem, you know, from 5 years onwards. But when she raced in the Inter-Dominions in Hobart, and you know, Sid and Shona Brown, that have, you know,
family friends forever.
You know, yes, great supporters, and always, you know, and then Field Marshal come along out of her. You know, to win that Miracle Mile for Sid was very special.
Flashing Red did what every young Canterbury horseman wants to achieve and win a New Zealand Cup, but it just sort of came out of nowhere, didn't it? And he not only won one, of course he won two, but tell me about how you got to train Flashing Red and the pathway to winning that Cup.
Well, it's quite interesting. We're actually at the Hobart Inter-Dominions with For Real, and Flashing Red was there with trainer Stewie Hunter, and he always just lacked that little yard of speed against the top horses, but he was a terrific star. He'd do all the work in the race, and so we just happened to be with Stewie and said, "You should send this horse over for the New Zealand Cup." And you know, I was pretty sceptical when he said, "Oh, I'm going to send him over." He was 9-year-old. He'd had 130 something starts. You know, he'd been in Perth with Justin Warwick and some great trainers, and you know, so but it's probably a great lesson. We just went to work on a horse. You know what I mean? We didn't care his history or whatever, and he just loved our place. He loved the environment, and he got better and better, and yeah, you could see all the time. And he, that first New Zealand Cup, he you know, he won at Ashburton, and it was one of those cups where there's 3 weeks to the race from Ashburton instead of.
Did John Hay drive him there?
John Hay drove him. I said to John Hay, "You don't realise how close you were to winning 2 New Zealand Cups," because he was nearly on him the second time as well. Yeah. And we wanted someone that was independent. John was an independent driver, and he did, you know, was a great driver, John Hay, and took no holes barred sort of thing. And and you had to drive Red like that. You had to have no respect for the other horses or the other drivers. So John was like that, and Naileen Banner came around, sat outside him, and he just outstayed her, and and it was 3 weeks to the Cup. So he had 11 days to his next race, which was a Friday night.
Yep.
And then 11 days to the Cup. So it was pretty hard to get it wrong because he was just in the zone, you know.
On the inside, Comedy Classic, Flashing Red and Anthony Butter going for the front. It's Flashing Red, it's an Australian victory, it's an Australian Quinella. Comedy Classic's going to run second, and it's all the honours to Aussie. They've won it, and a good win for Flashing Red from Comedy Classic. It's Ella.
He wasn't in the zone going into his second cup though, but I do recall you saying to me a month out, don't give up on him. He's such a great star, don't be surprised. The race itself, he came 3 wide, and I remember standing by the winning post and seeing Ants going forward and yelling out to Davey Earnshaw, get on my back, because Tribute was one of the favourites for the cup, and you guys believed was your best chance in the race.
Yeah, well, Tribute won the Flying Stakes, and he was actually going really well, and Flashing Red was a different horse. He'd had a few problems, and it was the same. We had 3 weeks to so after the Flying Stakes at Ashburton, he didn't race again, and it's really I sat down with myself and just went through everything that I could eliminate could be wrong with him. I treated him for soundness, which we injected his front joints. He wasn't sort of eating at the time. It was not like him, so I used to force feed him with, I'd sail on him every second day with a mixture I made up, and we eliminated the bleeding side of it. I treated him for urinary tract disease, and every little thing I ticked off and ticked off and ticked off. And as he got closer to the race, you could just see him change. I reckon if he'd had another week, he'd have won by 5 lengths. You know, that's how I felt. And but it was a phenomenal performance. And as you say, Ants went to go 3 wide because he said to, you know, like he wanted to drag Beaver into it, you know, like, and he had to get going anyway because it was time. But you know, Tribute won a terrific race, but Flashing Red was just that great stayer, you know.
Down to the winning post now, and it's Classic Cullen, the leader, 1 round to go. From Bailey's Dream, he'd have to be a superstar from there. He's done it so hard. Changeover's been smothered up on the inside. He's tucked away right behind the leader as they work out of the straight to the 1,000 metre mark. Then came Bondi, who's had a great run, followed by Roman Gladiator. Flashing Red's trying hard to work around the outside. Then came Keep Right On Dreaming. Tributers following up Flashing Red. Monkey King's got on 2, Tributes back. Sly Flying in the middle of those, and then came Waipawa Lad, followed by Awesome Ambro and Power of Tara. 29.5 down the back they run, and they've got 700 metres to go. It's Classic Cullen, the cup leader. Classic Cullen in front. He's holding sway at the moment from a very game Bailey's Dream. Then Flashing Red on the outside, followed by Changeover. In behind them then is Bondi coming into the race, followed by Tribute. Then Monkey King, he's going to be the widest runner. Roman Gladiator, Sly Flying, and then Keep Right On Dreaming. Down the side they run. Second quarter in 30.5. The big gun's about to fire now on the point of the turn, and Bailey's Dream. Bailey's Dream has hit the lead from Flashing Red, Tribute, and the Monkey. Here comes Monkey King right down the outside. It's Bailey's Dream. Monkey King starting to rattle down the outside. Tribute's right there in the middle. Monkey King got to the lead. The mighty Monkey in front. Flashing Red's coming back on the inside. Tribute in the middle. They go to the line. Flashing Red. What a win. The 10-year-olds won it. Flashing Red over Monkey King and Tribute in a magnificent cup.
You had that terrific run, obviously, in the Dominion, which, okay, it's a favourite race for yours. You've had great success in it, but it's the New Zealand Cup of trotting. But you won with horses like Mountbatten as well, and then your mum's horse Vulcan. It was a pretty special time. He ended up winning 10 Group 1s and won the Great Southern Star, and actually came back from that. And he was never renowned as a stayer, Vulcan, as in sitting part wasn't his go in life, but he came back a week later and won the trotting championship at Addington. So I think he won 5 Group 1s in a row.
Yeah, five Group 1s in 22 days.
Yeah.
But one of them was the heat with the Great Southern Stars, which probably shouldn't be a Group 1. But anyway, no, he was underrated. Like, he won 2 jewels, but he raced at a time when there was Stig and I Can Do's It. Like, they were champion horses, you know, and he was a bit of a bridesmaid. But he wasn't an out-and-out champion, but he was just a good little tradesman. And the year he won the Dominion in the free-for-all was the first year that they put them in the same week. And a lot of people didn't you know, I know Paul Neam with Dr. Hook, you know, he just set him for the... But I set my horse for the free-for-all. I thought, well, I'll win the free-for-all. Oh, he's got a chance to win the free-for-all. And whatever happens in the Dominion happens in the Dominion. So what ended up happening, it was a survival of the fittest race, and he'd had that race on Tuesday, and he's probably the fittest horse in the race, and he got up one by a head with a, you know, terrific run.
29.8, they run the corner in the Dominion. Dr. Hook led by 2, Clover Dawn. Vulcan's through now from I Can Do's It. Dr. Hook leads, 1:25 to go. Margin 2, Vulcan. Then Clover Dawn, I Can Do's It. Dr. Hook in front. Vulcan's getting close. It's Vulcan going after Dr. Hook, who's still just in front. Vulcan dives. Vulcan won the Dominion. It's a Group 1 double for Vulcan.
He won the Great Southern Stars. He won the Dullard Cups, the Australasian Trotters Champs. You know, he's a fair horse, really.
As they turn for home, 29 third quarter, Vulcan moved up to hit the lead from Sovereignty. My High Expectations, Ridge Edgar Hall give chase with Elegant Image, but it's all Vulcan. Vulcan spares away. This is a trotter in super form, and Vulcan has won easily.
You mentioned Stig. He's a great story. Did you buy him at the sale, or you couldn't syndicate him, or something like that? So you ended up having to own him yourself and bring a couple of people in, and then didn't really get going for you, so he ended up at that bloke Nian's.
I actually bought a in the pocket colt at the sales that I couldn't syndicate.
Right.
And I bought Stig out of the paddock sight unseen. I was away somewhere. I sent Prop with a cheque, and I said it was $10,000. I said, if you like him, put him on the float and give the fella the cheque. So he did that, and Stig I just bought for myself as a bit of a project. He was a yearling, I think, unnamed. And because Take a Moment had come along, I put them both in a syndicate, because Stig was the profile horse, to try and sell this other guy. And I ended up selling 2 shares, I think, and Jim Boyd, who used to sing the songs, and he was the only one bright enough to go in on it. Yeah. So, but Stig, you know, we felt that he had the ability, but we just couldn't get it out of him, you know, and I was busy with travelling to Aussie and so forth, so I rang Paul Nean and said, would you take him? Well, he wouldn't take him, you know.
Right.
Thought I was giving him a duffer, and I think I rang him 3 times, and so he took him in the end, and so the rest is history.
Well, he took a few starts to win a race, though, 6 or 7 starts, so it wasn't instant success, but what a performer when he was flying. Like,
what a staying horse, you know.
They just could. He outstayed them so many times. I remember he won a Summer Cup, and Davey just launched him down the back, and
yeah.
Oh man, he was just an amazing horse to
well, he had that French bred connection as well, and close related to Take a Moment.
Yep.
And I think the race you talked about is when he took on one under Kenny, and you know they went head to head, and he's just a terrific stayer.
Stig's the leader from King Charlie, who won't give it away. The Fat Controller's rolled out to have another crack. Then Springbank Richard up the passing lane, but it's Stig the leader from the Fat Controller. Then Springbank Richard up the inside. Stig's hanging on near the line, and Super Stig's back in business from Springbank Richard. A tremendous run.
No, it was good to be part of. Paul still says I'm the biggest slinger that he's ever trained for, so I'd say he's still got the money too.
Yeah, he probably is. Just on him though, you pride yourself on your trotters and how well you've done. Well, he's just unbelievable, isn't he?
Well, he's one of the guys you respect. You know, I know not so long ago we had a couple of beers at Davey Butts, and there was Paul, Ian and me, and young Bob was listening to us. But you know, Paul's an icon, and you know, when he lined up a trotter, you're always scared of him.
Yep, absolutely you were. I'm going to move now to part of the reason why you're here. You had a lot of great owners, and you mentioned some of them before, Jack O'Donnell and Merv Rogers, and you know, a stack of people, Peter and Joan Cox, some of whom have passed on, and some of who just got that a little bit older, and they decided that maybe it wasn't, you know, their thing to be investing in harness horses. But there was also the All-Stars factor and the dominance of Mark Purdon, who became Mark Purdon and Natalie Rasmussen. Was that part of the motivation to move?
Hard to say, Greg, that part of it. Like, I think what happened with our business model was buying going horses and improving them or taking them to the next level or taking them to the races where they could win the money. Like a Marseille, like we didn't improve Marseille, we just took him to the right races where he could win races, you know, and travelled with him. So what was happening is that those horses were becoming like 300,000-400,000 to buy, and you couldn't facilitate and find the owners to do it, you know. And our business model just wasn't working, and you had to go back to the yearling sales pretty much. And the last 3 yearling sales I went to, I bought one horse, you know. So it was, you know, our business was struggling as far as going forward, and I couldn't see a future. And Mark was so dominant at the yearling sales; he was buying 50 yearlings a year,
And the best ones, and they're all by Bettor's Delight, or, you know. So.
Yeah, and it become less enjoyable for me, you know, going to the races and not having a chance or having a nice horse, and they were so dominant through that period. But you know,
it wouldn't be like you to run away from a fight. Put it that way, but
no, I think it was just time. I think I was spending so much time away. Field Marshal was away all summer.
Yep.
You know, with them and with the handicapping, you once you got a good horse, you pretty much had to travel over to Australia with it, and I was spending so much time away. And as I said, I'd been training for 30 odd years, and you know, while I love going to Methven and Motocross and those race meetings, I'd been doing it for so long. You know, I felt I needed to be refreshed and a new challenge. And you know, as I said, like Sydney was the place to be with the training centre, and you know, no hassles, and at my stage of my life.
A race that you've had enormous success in, a race that you love. It's the New Zealand Cup of Australian harness racing, the AG Hunter Cup, and all of the history around it. To win it with Mr. DG while DG was he was there, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure, was he there that night?
Yep.
2004.
Yep.
Yeah, that must have been awesome for you.
Well, we should have won it with a horse called Happy Acid. He ran to the front and it had one, but he used to pull up, and he pulled up, and anyway, I'd had a determination to win it ever since, you know. And you know, Mr. DG was a right horse. He just had to step away. He was not a notoriously bad beginner sometimes. He stepped away, got a beautiful run, and I know Ants, you know, always talks about it being one of his best drives ever. Every move he made was the right one, and I think he got 2 suspensions out of the race. So shows you what he was willing to do to win the race. It was nothing untoward, but it was just you know, tightening the rules. But then from then on, we always.
Well, Mr. Feelgood, of course, he won one of those, and he's an amazing story how you come to got him and bring him out to Australia and do that. But the Inter-Dominion at the old Parklands track, they'll never be able to replicate that, and his performance to beat the Inter-Dominion king, Black's a Fake, will long go in my memories as one of the great tactical drives and one of the great Inter-Dominions of all time.
I remember sitting with Ants when the barrier draw came out, and we drew barrier 13, and he said, "No, I'm going to knock," which he pretty much did. I'm going to get straight on Carly Mick's back, and he's the only one who'll drag me into the race. So he had it worked out, and it worked to plan. You know, it can react to over race naturally. Those big races, when you're a bit of an outsider, or all you can do is have them right for the big day, and hope that something goes wrong with the more favoured runners, which occurred.
Carlu Mick and Black's a Fake. Mr. Feelgood went back to the inside. Black's a Fake. He's holding Carlu Mick. Can he hold Mr. Feelgood? Mr. Feelgood through on the inside is going to win the Inter-Dominion. Yes! Mr. Feelgood beat Black's a Fake. Third, Carlu Mick.
It was a terrific trip. I was having a bit of trouble with his feet. He's such a he had little contracted feet, Mr. Feelgood, and I remember Cecil Devine used to like to keep his horses sharp. He used to work them in a figure 8. Someone had told me this. I don't know whether it's true or not. And so I was working him in the middle of the Parklands track on the grass in a figure 8 and jogging around. And the caretaker came out and said, "Look, I don't want you to do that because you're going to end up wearing the grass out. I want it looking good for the race." So I said, "Oh, no worries." So next morning I got up an hour earlier and went out. And I'm jogging around. He comes out and he gives me a real. He says, "I told you yesterday." I said, "Well, I heard you yesterday," and I just kept jogging, you know. And then but I had to do it for the best interest of my horse because the main track was too hard and the other track was too deep for the sand. So yeah.
Did you buy him a case of beer after you won the final?
Yeah, but I did give Kevin Seymour a ring. He was a partner. I said, just you might want to have a talk to that guy. Yeah, we had some great fun in those inter-dominion trips. You know, the people you meet in the West Australian trainers, and I think when you look back, I used to keep my horses with Gavin Lang in Melbourne, and first trip to Sydney I stayed with Brian Hancock. I stayed with Barry Purden and Katrina in Auckland, and when I went to Perth I was working at Fred Kersley's track when you rub shoulders with people like that, Fred's...
It's racing royalty, isn't it?
It is, and Fred's, one of the nicest, most respected horsemen you'd ever meet, and you pinch yourself really when you look back, and they all liked having a beer and a yarn and want to know about what you did, so they taught me a lot about humility and how to act around, the horse doesn't make the man, it's the person inside.
It almost seems unfair that we're going to brush over Stun and Cullen Choice Achiever, and you mentioned Marseille before, but such was the run that you had in that great race.
Yeah, for sure. Stun and Cullen, I had a decent bet on him when he came over for it. I used to have 1 or 2 bets a year, and he was one of them at 850. He beat the Mighty Quinn.
Yep.
So the Mighty Quinn carried all the money, but he got a beautiful run into the race. Ants drove him perfect, and Choice Achiever was a really tricky horse to train. But he was right on the night, and he went to the Shepparton Cup 2 weeks before and went awful, and I just sort of set about. I had a set plan, and I worked on that plan for the first week, and then the second week I changed it completely because he was doing too well, so but you just got to be instinctive when you're away with horses like that, and I think that was one of my strengths. I never really had a set plan, but I'd always have the foundation into them and just instinctively change it, or whether it's soreness or soundness or how to work them,
Sydney, Melbourne, you tried that for a wee while, not long, and now you've settled in Queensland. Is this going to be it for a while?
For sure, we're here to stay, and this is where we're going to retire, and we're, I've got really interested in the thoroughbred game.
Tell me about that.
I've got a few gallopers that I've bought, and I'm working on the breeding side of things and trying to get up to speed. It's quite interesting, you'll in the harness you've got betters to light up majors, they dominate all the big races, but in the thoroughbreds you'll have the 18 horses in the Derby and there'll be 17 different stallions, so it's a total different, but the money over here for it and the high profile it's got, it's a terrific industry, and it's just a shame harness can't close that gap, but the harness will always be in my blood, but we've achieved a lot in that side of it, but I feel like a wee challenge towards the galloping would be great. So
what have you got breeding wise at the moment? I see there's one bred in the Royal out there.
Well, they're not over expensive horses because they're so. We've got an American 2-year-old that I really like that I bought because it goes back to the third dam was by Noble Bijou, the Anderton stood in Mosgiel, and she was a sister to Powley, who was unfortunately died on the crossing, so that rang a bell with me, so I bought him, and he looks really promising. So he's been with a trainer at Warwick Farm, Jared Austin, and but we'll train him ourselves, and then I've got a US Navy flag filly out of a Fastnet Rock mare that looks pretty promising, so it's got a bit of bloodline there, so yeah.
All right, the setup here, it's a family operation. There's you, Andrea, who seems to be pretty busy out there and working. She's in good shape. She might be riding some of those gallopers, I tell you. You keep the work up to her. And of course, young Riley, who I know you'd like to take into training partnership, but they don't have them here. He's going well.
He is going well. He's got the hands and gets the trotters around and those sort of things, which is a big thing for a young driver. Now we all work well together. We want to sort of keep it like that if we can. We don't want to get too big, and
it's pretty busy.
It's busy. We've got a few numbers at the moment, and as I said, we have a worker of the day every day, and I haven't got it yet. So it's probably a good thing.
What's the criteria? What do you need to get that?
Oh, just hang in there probably. Andy gets it most days, and Riley gets it now and again when he's late home from the trots. But it's not something I'm aspiring to get, Greg.
The harness game's been so great to you, and equally you guys have been to it. It's always going to be there, isn't it? It's always going to be in the blood.
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's been good to us, but I think we've given a bit back. Every time I go somewhere or talk to people, and we hold ourselves pretty. We like to have a drink, and some of those wins we had, you got to enjoy those times, and cherish those moments. But the harness race has been good. It's always going to be part of your blood, and you know, while you know, we've still got to look for the next champion because that keeps your name in lights. But you know, I'm pretty happy with what we've achieved so far in life, and the way we live our own life with that's pretty important to me.